Hello everyone, and welcome to another video. Now you might remember a recent video I did featuring this exact same CPU. The i9-13900K, along with the MSI Meg Z790 Unify. That was a particularly pleasant pairing, one that I'd recommend, but it wasn't cheap, not by a long shot. And while the motherboard is a looker, it certainly isn't essential to getting the most out of Intel's latest flagship processor. So today we're going to go a little bit more affordable, at least in terms of the board. The MSI Pro series never gets unnecessarily fancy. It's just function over form with this series, and that means value for money. Today's 13900K build utilizes DDR5 6000CL36 memory, which is ideal for this chip. As usual, it has 24 gigs of capacity split across 8 3GB sticks. This setup also includes an RX 4090, though a cheaper card would work just fine with the power limits set lower. And while the graphics card could be something more entry-level, I thought we may as well go all out. Because these parts do deserve it, and let us face it, it's always nice to have a bit of extra performance headroom when playing the latest games. I've got a sense of pride every time I fire up a PC like this one and add a new game to it, knowing that we've built a capable system that can handle pretty much anything. The case is the Thermaltake V250, a micro ATX enclosure that reminds me of the Definer R series from the NZXT lineup. It's quiet, it's well made, it looks good, and it's easy to get on with. I haven't used this particular case before, but if it has anything like my experiences with their other cases, then it is going to be a good one indeed. Today we'll be looking at some gaming benchmarks, some 13th gen i9 specific tests. And I will run a few checks to see how well the CPU is performing within this rather modest setup. This isn't a cooling test per se, but it'll give us an idea of how well this chip can do under less than perfect conditions. I know this is a 300 quid motherboard, but considering the performance on offer here, it represents incredible value for money. It doesn't support overclocking, so no tweaking of the CPU or memory here. But there are plenty of other areas where the Z790 Pro can impress. There's a single M.2 slot, which supports the latest and fastest storage. Loads of USB connectivity, including Type-C, both inside the case and at the rear. If your case supports it, you can even use one of the USB connectors to power a front panel from the board itself. And there are plenty of fan headers too, including a dedicated header for case lighting. This setup will cost around £720 or dollars, depending on where you live, of course. But there are ways that we can bring this down further. For example, the PCIe 5 SSD that I've installed here cost me £280. So swapping this out for a cheaper M.2 drive would make a difference. Same goes for the case. While it's nothing to complain about, you could save money here and still end up with a very competent system. The PowerColor 4090 I have here is often available for under $1,000, sometimes as low as $950, and I've seen the MSI Z790 Pro go for as little as $250. So yeah, this is definitely a doable configuration, and one that I think a lot of people would enjoy. If you want to learn more about the 13900K, check out the review, which should be live now or it will be soon. But I can tell you that it's right up there with the 7950X in terms of multi-core performance. The big difference here, of course, is the IPC gains, meaning that the i9 is a better choice for single-thread applications and games. The stock cooler does a decent job. Not quite enough to keep the CPU under 80 degrees during prolonged stress tests, but it's not going to hurt your ears either. I don't think many people will opt for the stock cooler anyway, because buying a water cooler alongside a high-end part like this makes the whole package a lot more expensive. So I'm glad I didn't go down that route. Well, the 4090 may be overkill for this setup. It means we can turn our attention to some games and see what this combination can really do. Cyberpunk was tested first with the high crowd density slider turned down. I found that turning this setting down helped to improve performance, frame times, and temperatures with this system. Not sure why, but it seems that the CPU is doing a lot of work when it comes to NPCs, so just bear that in mind if you do own a 13900K. I've stuck with the Ultra preset here because it feels like the best way to play. If you want to play at lower settings, then you can. You might even want to lower the preset to medium for a smoother experience, but there is no denying that it looks really good here. The 490 makes light work of maintaining over 60 FPS, and with the high crowd density option enabled, the average actually went up. This is the only game I tested today where this happened, so again, I'm not sure what's going on here. For Forza Horizon 5, the Ultra preset with TAA was used, and again, over 60 FPS, with respectable 1 and 1% lows. The CPU usage sat at around 70 to 80% max. So this chip definitely has a lot more to give in pairing with a lower-end GPU. Now, of course, you might be able to get away with pairing this processor with a mid-range card and still get decent results. But this is more of a show-off video, really. Let's be honest. No one has gone, nah, pair an i9-1390 OK with a 490, unless they have a lot of money to spend. But it is nice to see what the CPU can do in combination with one of NVIDIA's latest graphics cards. In GTA 5, the highest settings were used with MSAA disabled, and the advanced graphics options also set to their respective highest values. FXAA was enabled to combat jaggies introduced by the lack of MSAA, but the overall image quality was still very good. Despite the 1 and 1% lows being lower than in previous games tested, there was absolutely nothing to complain about here. The 1390 OK was uneven, hitting 70 degrees during this gameplay, and there was no noticeable frame drops whatsoever. This is how I personally play, and I'm pleased to say that this setup can handle it. Red Dead Redemption 2 ran very well with the console equivalent settings, which include TA and post-processing. The CPU usage was low here, hovering around 40 to 50%. Occasionally it would spike to 60 when driving through towns, but it never hit 100, which is always a good sign. We had no problems reaching and maintaining over 60 FPS, even during intense action scenes. The only time I saw a few drops was when exiting the second story mode menu, but this is something that happens with pretty much every system I test. When it comes to ray tracing, the 1390 OK and 490 are a match made in heaven. I think these two need each other in order to perform at their best. At least that's how I feel. Obviously you do and need a 490 to get the most out of this processor, and the same goes the other way around. But it's always nice to see its RT settings enabled without sacrificing too much in the way of performance. In Fortnite, the medium preset with epic shadows was used. The reason for this is because enabling ray-traced reflections, for example, just didn't make sense in my eyes. Reflections didn't really make a difference in this game, and it would mean lowering the visual quality in other areas to maintain a similar average to what we saw with the standard rendering mode enabled. 100 resolution scaling was also applied. This is one of those games where I think 144 OP is probably the best way to play. But it still looks really good at 4K. Finally then, it's Hogwarts Legacy. Again, the Ultra preset was chosen, and I decided against any upscaling methods, because once again it just didn't seem necessary. There was no need to enable DLSS or FSR here, and dropping the native resolution didn't help much anyway. This game is very demanding, even at 108 OP, and although the 490 managed to squeeze out 50 FPS on average, it's probably best reserved for 144 OP. That said, this is early access, so things will change and hopefully improve with the official release. Overall, the i9-1390 OK is a really impressive chip, and it's worth noting that it was paired with a basic cooler here. One that you shouldn't consider buying unless you're on a tight budget. The cheaper Z790 motherboard also meant that we couldn't adjust the RAM timings or the BCLK either, so no overclocking of any kind was possible. The potential is definitely there though, and so is the desire to buy a better motherboard, so that we can get the most out of this beast. That said, I think the Z790 Pro does represent excellent value for money, and it's certainly a contender if you after a 13th Gen Intel platform. Thank you very much for watching. Then if you enjoyed this one, leave a like, leave a dislike, if you didn't subscribe, if you haven't done so already. And hopefully I'll see all of you in the next one.